and the direct impacts on our military's ability to defend our nation are not the end of the peril that climate change could pose to our national security. They're just the beginning. This is a point that my friend and former Senate colleague from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Senator John Warner, made eloquently and repeatedly. He was also, by the way, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee and Secretary of the Navy. And John said in testimony before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, climate change is a threat multiplier, making worse the problems that already exist. And we're already seeing that happen. For example, in Nigeria, climate change didn't lead to the rise of the terrorist group Boko Haram, but the severe drought that country suffered and the government's inability to cope with it helped create the political and economic volatility that the militants exploited to seize villages, butcher teachers, and kidnap hundreds of innocent schoolgirls. Similarly, it's not a coincidence that immediately prior to the civil war in Syria, the country experienced its worst drought on record. As many as 1.5 million people migrated from Syria's farms to its cities, intensifying the political unrest that was just beginning to roil and boil in the region. Again, I am not suggesting that climate change was the primary reason for the crisis in Syria. Obviously it wasn't. The war was launched by a brutal dictator who began attacking, torturing, and barrel bombing his own people. But the drought that devastated communities across the country exacerbated instability on the ground and made a bad situation worse, and forced people to migrate, so you had a mixing in a very sectarian place where at a sectarian time of definition where people were exploiting that sectarianism, that made a ready pool of recruits. Just last month, a study was published indicating, quote, the combination of high temperatures and humidity could, within just a century, result in extreme conditions around the Persian Gulf that are intolerable to human beings if climate change continues unabated. Scholars suggest that access to air conditioning could well mean the difference between life and death in such hotspots as Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE. And the prospect of a hotter, drier climate throughout the Middle East and parts of Asia will place even more strain on the most precious and essential resource of all, fresh water. We've already seen tensions rise around the basins of the Nile River in Africa, the Indus River in South Asia, and of course the Mekong River in Southeast Asia. Consider that almost every country with land borders shares some international river basins with its neighbors. Historically, this has led to more cooperation than conflict, but if the water starts to disappear, and climate change is expected to significantly alter both access to and the availability of fresh water, imagine the tensions that can rise. There have been books written about war over water. Pressures and demands will steadily increase, and the future may look very different from the past. Our future national security strategy is going to be affected also by what's going on in the Arctic. The melting of the polar cap is opening sea lanes that never before existed. The potential there is already there for a global race to exploit the resources of the region. Everybody knows Russia planted a flag on the North Pole bottom. Other countries are up there, China and others, with their ships, mapping out the exploitation of resources, including oil, natural gas, fish. Economic riches tend to attract military interest as nations seek to ensure their own rights are protected. And we know, because we track it, that these countries like Russia, China, and others are active in the Arctic. China is modernizing and expanding its navy. The United States believes that all activities in the Arctic should be carried out peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law. But climate change raises the stakes, and we all need to ensure that we are taking steps to prevent competition, new competition, from leading to conflict. The bottom line is that the impacts of climate change can exacerbate resource competition, threaten livelihoods, and increase the risk of instability and conflict, especially in places already undergoing economic, political, and social stress.